Initially, we started in the court itself started in December of 2009 as the City of Tucson Veterans Treatment Court. At that time, it was a collaboration between the Veterans Administration, the City of Tucson, the City Prosecutor's Office, and the Public Defender's Office. And initially, what the program was designed to do is what it still does, which is afford veterans who've gotten in trouble with the law an opportunity to complete a program of treatment, to take advantage of the benefits they've earned by virtue of their service in the military and avoid the stigma that comes with getting a criminal conviction on their record. So basically the way it works is most of the people that we see are people who've been arrested and are taken to the Pima County Jail. They're given the opportunity to agree to participate in Veterans Treatment Court. The prosecutor screens the cases. There are some cases, obviously, that aren't appropriate. Since this is Tucson City Court, it's primarily misdemeanor cases. It's the cases that unfortunately afflict those veterans who are returning from combat. It's the criminal trespass, domestic violence, drinking in public, minor assault charges, the things that I like to think are in large part as a result of their being deployed in the military and returning to civilian life without really an adequate opportunity to adjust to the conditions of civilian life. But basically, we offer them the opportunity, if they will agree to engage in a program of treatment with the Veterans Administration for 6 months and report to court. One of the things that we found is having them report to court on a regular basis really helps them, because most of them, having recently separated from the military, are used to a program of structure and organization. And when they come back, a lot of that is lacking. They tend to lay around the house, which creates problems in their home life. And then sometimes they're asked to leave the house. Then they then become homeless. A lot of them turn to alcohol or drugs as a self-medication device. But basically, if they complete the program successfully, the prosecutor dismisses the charges. The other thing that we've developed over the years is a mentor program. There are things that a veteran doesn't want to tell the judge, doesn't want to tell his caseworker, but somebody else who served in the military serves as kind of a sounding board, also somebody that he can call when he's thinking about having that drink at 2 o'clock in the morning. He can call this person who knows what he's been through and hopefully can help him avoid, reoffending. It is a paramount part of the court program. They have to remain drug and alcohol free, and they are not allowed to reoffend. In other words, they can't commit any more crimes. We got a grant from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is a federal government agency, in October of 2012 to expand the court. We now have what we call the Regional Municipalities Veterans Treatment Court. We see people from the town of Marana, from the town of Oro Valley, from the city of South Tucson, and from the town of Sarita. So what we decided to do was to co-locate all of the cases here in Tucson City Court, because it's readily accessible, and unfortunately most people have gotten a traffic ticket and they know where it is. And so we co-located. We now hear cases from all 5 of those jurisdictions, which affords us a broader spectrum. I'd really like to read some statistics. This is from a RAND study, which unfortunately is 2008. But at that time, they estimated that of the 1.64 million troops who've been deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq, approximately 300,000 suffer from PTSD, and about 320,000 suffer from a probable traumatic brain injury and or depression. And the traumatic brain injury and depression is particularly significant because currently more soldiers take their own lives in a year than are killed in the respective military conflicts. Last year, over 6,000 service members took their own lives, and it was in large part because of conditions such as traumatic brain injury and depression, or a combination thereof. People don't realize, some of the movies fictionalize it, but some of these men and women have experienced numerous, sometimes perhaps daily, concussive explosions as a result of the improvised explosive devices. And there's no outward manifestation. In other words, there's no shrapnel, there's no wound, there's no injury. we're beginning to recognize that hyperactivity, that hypersensitivity. A lot of the educational institutions now recognize some of these people cannot sit with their back to a door. They can't sit with their back to a window. Any type of noise causes them to jump or be startled or, lash out. And, even in a domestic situation, sometimes people are, when you're in a military situation, when you're awakened, your immediate response or reaction is to swing out. And sometimes that causes issues with spouses and partners. And it's not the traditional issue of power and control. It's merely the way that they're trained to act. And there's no real transition period between coming back from the military, coming back from this hypersensitive environment. One of the things that we like about this program is, particularly if they're treated by the Veterans Administration, not only do they get treatment for the outward cause, the alcoholism, the drug use, but the VA will also recognize and treat for traumatic brain injury or PTSD. People don't realize the Veterans Administration here in the city of Tucson on South 6th Avenue is nationally recognized for their prominence and their ability to treat a person suffering from PTSD. They receive military members from all over the country because their treatment is so efficacious and works so well. But the biggest impact is the separation from their families, the effect that it has on the community. I mean, these people, like I said, were productive members. When they return, because of the conditions like TBI and and PTSD, they're no longer able to function without the treatment. And the treatment is there, it's available, they've earned the treatment as a result of their service to the country. What I didn't mention is, as part of the new program, the Regional Municipalities Veterans Treatment Court, we are now able to offer treatment to people whose discharge from the military has been less than honorable. There are a lot of people who receive discharges for reasons such as drug use or repeated deployments. Some of them, on their third or fourth deployment, they just say, I've had enough. And they commit a minor offense and get separated from the service. And there are a lot of people who have been separated under less than honorable conditions for reasons of sexual orientation. There are a lot of programs now that enable these veterans to go back and try to get their discharge upgraded to an honorable discharge so that they can qualify for the services. But I really think the program's helpful. I think it does prevent people, and the other part of it is it lessens the jail population, which saves money for the county, and it saves money for the city because the Veterans Administration or our sister agency, which is called El Pueblo Community Services. I was blessed. I served in Vietnam for 6 months. I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps. We didn't see a lot of combat. And so I'm very happy about that because, I'm here in one piece. But I can tell you when you come back, or when I came back, it's a totally different experience. I mean, now there's a great wellspring of support for the veterans. There's an ocean of support. When I came back from Vietnam, I got tired of telling people I was there. I'd start telling people I was just on a vacation in the South Pacific because you were met with, well, why didn't you resist the draft? Why did you go? Why didn't you fight it? I, at that time, felt and still do that it was my personal obligation. I wasn't happy about it, but I felt it was my personal obligation to serve my country, whether I agreed or disagreed politically with the situation. So I spent 6 months in Vietnam. We were I like to describe to people, we were part of one of the movies in reverse. You remember those World War II movies where the LST comes up to the beach and the front goes down and the soldiers run off? Well, we ran on because we were so happy to get out of there. We landed in Okinawa. I spent about 6 months in Okinawa, and then I came back and I spent the remainder of my stateside time at Camp Pendleton. And I got out 3 months early to return to law school. But that was a transition. I mean, when you come back, it's not the same. I mean, you're not the same person. It's not the same environment. So it took me probably a good 3 to 4 months to get used to interacting with people again. My favorite instance is we had a Vietnam vet who was stoned alcoholic. I mean, he came to court twice and he was a .27, which is almost 4 times the legal limit. You couldn't tell he was drunk except from the odor. We finally convinced him. He's been clean and sober now for almost a year. he was in court after about 4 months. I said, "Hey, Mr. So-and-so, how is it being sober?" He turned around, he looked at me, he said, "Hell, Judge, nobody knew I was drunk until they saw me sober." But those are the type of success stories that really make this program worthwhile. And it's probably been one of the best things of my legal career. I mean, another simple example, a guy came in and he was my age, he was a Vietnam vet. I said, "What are you doing with yourself?" He said, "I don't know, just kind of kicking around." I said, "Why don't you get your GED?" I didn't give it a second thought. 4 months later, my secretary calls me and said, "Mr. So-and-so's up here." Well, I had no idea who Mr. So-and-so was. It was the same guy. He was so proud. He said, "Judge, here's my GED." And that's the type of thing that really makes it worthwhile, and it makes it rewarding.